Sigma presents a conversation with Itai Pazner, visionary strategist and former CEO of 888 Holdings. Itai Pazner is a driving force behind some of the industry's boldest digital transformations.
CEOs and leadership styles come in different shapes and form. My personal belief that leadership should set an example and lead by example, both internally and to external stakeholders. CEOs in the industry need to be resilient. It's a challenging industry. It's a fast-paced, moving industry. There's a lot of external challenges, as well as day-to-day operational challenges that every business has. There are a lot of external challenges in the form of regulatory changes that are frequent, microeconomical changes that happen from time to time and happened a lot in the last few years. So resilience is super important. Leading by example is super important, and a combination of having a really strong vision for the company that you can communicate both internally to the staff and the colleagues in the company, and externally to all the stakeholders, but also very, I would say, closely managing the day-to-day business. So it's not only about thinking long-term, it's a combination of keep changing the vision between long-term and short-term day-to-day operations, because if you don't meet your day-to-day objectives and goals, then there is no long-term. So those are the qualities that I believe are critical in our industry and essentially in many other industries. Yeah, so definitely public companies, leaders, I believe, have more pressure. They have just so many more stakeholders. So first of all the institutional investors, all the private investors, they have many stakeholders. Their performance is very visible on a very short-term basis. So they report every quarter, and every quarter you need to meet your goals. And if you don't meet your goals or your projections on a quarterly basis, you get punished quite severely. And sometimes, it's difficult because you have to make decisions and choices based on the fact that you're measured on not only obviously on a long-term basis, but on a short-term basis. So it is, in my view, more challenging to be in a position of a CEO position of a public company rather than a private company that has a bit less short-term reporting conditions on a quarterly basis. Yeah, so it's a really good question. An IPO, I think, is not a target within itself for a company. It's a means to raise money, sometimes to raise the profile of a company, and it needs to be considered very, very seriously and carefully before doing an IPO. It completely changes the way the company operates from pre-IPO to post-IPO. It affects everyone. It affects the management of the company. It affects the employees of the company, and it changes a lot of things. It's not that it's necessarily better or worse. It's just very different, and companies need to be prepared for that. A lot of companies go through a kind of initial shock after an IPO because they're not fully prepared. So they do a long process of preparation. It's about probably a year or more of preparation for an IPO, setting all of your finances and processes and everything that needs to be organized before an IPO. It takes a lot of time, a lot of capacity from the company, but I think people don't consider how much needs to change after the IPO, because the company needs to operate in a different way. So first of all, it needs to be considered, and there needs to be a really good reason to do it. So if you want to raise a lot of funds in the public market, then IPO obviously is a great way to do it. If you want to monetize, if you're a private owner and you want to monetize, then IPO is one way to do it, but there are other ways. There's private equity, and there's all kinds of other vehicles to liquidate your or monetize your assets. So definitely, I can't say if I recommend it or not, but definitely very seriously consider it, and do it only if you have a really, really good reason to do it, because after you raise the money, after you complete the IPO, it changes the way the company operates essentially forever, as long as it's listed. Yeah, so sometimes after it is difficult to reverse it. There are examples of it's difficult to take a company from public to private, because essentially you need to buy all of the shares of the company in order to do that. So that's usually done through private equity firms or large groups of investors that identify an opportunity to take a company from public to private, because they can manage it easier with less public pressure. So for instance, if you want to invest much more out of the profitability of the company, it's difficult when the public market is used to a certain level of profitability. And if you decide that now you need to invest a lot, if it's in technology or if it's in marketing in a public company, which reduces your profits, it's difficult to do. Under privately held companies, it's easier to do. So those are the examples. I'm trying to think now out loud with you of examples of companies that were taken private. I actually don't have none pop into my mind, but there definitely are good examples. And again, it's usually the private equity. They take them from public, they take them private, they fix them, they grow them, and then they take them public again to monetize the investment. Yeah, so M&A is a natural progression of any industry, but specifically a fast-growing industry, because it's a way for a company to grow unorganically. So every company has its organic plans, but good companies have a combination of organic and unorganic plans to expand. It's difficult for a company to be successful in multiple verticals and multiple jurisdictions. So you see some of the best companies in our industry, their strategy is actually to be good, very successful in their core markets and their core products. But then when they want to expand out, going into new markets, new regions, Flutter has been super successful in that. They buy leading operators in each of the target markets that's not their core market, and successfully grow through that, and then leverage assets that they have, like platform, like know-how, like trading of sports and all their central capabilities. They leverage them with a strong local, they call it a local hero strategy. And that's been, a very successful strategy in the industry. There are examples of companies that have been super successful without doing M&A. One of them is Bet365, which is a great example of a really, really strong focus on organic expansion, on product leadership, and specifically in sports betting, and expanding organically globally. So I would say there's not one right way to do things, but M&A is definitely, I would say, a very valid part of a growth strategy. Combining it obviously with strong organic growth, I think it's a very valid and useful strategy, and many companies have done it in the industry. And I think there's still a lot of room for more M&A in the online gaming industry as it's growing and expanding globally. Yeah, I do see more consolidation. Again, if you look at the top markets in the world now, it's the UK, the US, European markets, some of the big European markets, Italy, Spain, Scandinavians. You can see there are obviously a lot of operators in the markets, but somewhere between 80 to 90% of the revenue is concentrated within the top, between 3 to 5 operators. So there is a long list of smaller operators, usually more iGaming, so casino operators, and they have a place in the market in terms of variety, in terms of kind of multi-brand strategy. But the vast majority of the market share will go to the leaders in each market. And They also do consolidation within the market. So sometimes they find like second tier operators that give them some additional benefits and they can acquire them. So absolutely room for consolidation, and the natural tendency of the online gaming market and other scalable markets is for a big part of the revenue for the customers to be part of the leading groups in the industry. I think it's probably easier for land-based operators to expand into online and then run what's called a multi-channel or hybrid operation. And you can see that again in many of the markets. In Europe, you have all the legacy operators. If it's William Hill, Ladbrokes, Coral, SNAI, in Italy, Sisal. In Spain, you have land-based who went online, and even in the US, Caesars and MGM are land-based operators that went online. The benefit they have is really strong brands, and brands are critical in the online gaming industry. It costs a lot of money to build a brand and to build trust, and that's something that these companies have inherently. So for them to expand to online, which happened in many cases, and I think the ones that missed that, and in every market there are operators that missed that opportunity to expand to online, they got kind of almost marginalized and wiped out. But the ones that did manage to do the transformation to online are running a successful hybrid omni-channel solution of online and offline. And I think there's always a strong customer base that either likes to do some of the experience in offline retail or a big part of their experience in retail. So it's a valid strategy going forward. Obviously, in terms of how much offline or retail is expanding, I don't think it has huge room for expansion, but it definitely, it's scaled down a bit in some of the markets. It has a very long-term prospects to stay as part of the overall strategy in the industry. Yeah, so, if you look, I think history repeats itself, and the UK constantly changes and adapts its regulation, and I think they will continue to do so. There's a lot of discussion about the correlation between over-regulating and black market, and I was in a few conversations with participants from the UKGC, and I think everyone recognizes that there is a correlation, and regulators need to be careful not to go too extreme in over-regulating and then essentially pushing customers into black markets. We see it in all the markets. Germany is a great example for a market of when it's very black because of over-regulations. There's a lot of discussion about it in the UK. Holland is another example that might be over-regulating. They're speaking about that effect of a black market. So I think it looks like after the white paper has been done, the big chunk of regulation in the UK, I think, is over. But there will be, I believe, there'll be more coming. I hope it will be manageable, and I hope it won't be over-regulating and pushing more of the industry into the black market.